ride with me to the other clans and we will defeat the sky people.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.
Hello, hello, hello out there in podcast and YouTube land. You have reached Johnny Has the Keys, where we talk about horror movies and science fiction films and those key elements that often lift, most times separate them from the average genre fare. My name is Tim, and I am here, and we are glad to have you back. If you are revisiting us, that means you are on to my friend David and I's unique brand of movie reviews and criticism. If you are new to us, this is an unscripted podcast. Sometimes we stammer like idiots, but that is to be expected. And we appreciate you giving us a role. I'm, like I said, here with my good friend David Horton. David, how are you?
I'm good. That was a good sort of opening there. Yeah.
I feel like I should have said more.
For those, I feel like I should have said more. For those of you who are new to us, this is totally unscripted. We make this up as we go. We don't even confab other than what the movie's going to be on any of our feelings about it, reactions, keys that we have, anything. So that's what we enjoy about it, is the spontaneity and improvisation of it.
I know what I was going to say is that I used to say that lift them above the average genre fare, but we've got to now where we're not just doing great movies. Sometimes we're doing okay or even bad movies.
Correct.
So we say the keys separate them from the average fare for a certain reason, not necessarily a good one.
Either up or down. Yes. They separate them. Yes.
So that hence my lift and separate comment from the old Cross Your Heart bra commercials.
And normally we start with what's happened in your genre week. And for my genre week this week, I finally after way too long watched the movie that everybody in Oscar world is talking about, called Everything Everywhere All at Once. This is a movie I think you need to watch. I would be very curious to get your response to it. I watched it like 1.5 times. I watched the entire thing and then I went back and got some certain scenes that rewatched just to say, did I really see that way, or sort of thing. I'm conflicted about this movie. I think the performances are phenomenal in it. I think Michelle Yeoh, who will, if by the time this airs has not already won the Oscar, will win the Oscar for it. And I think Jamie Lee Curtis is absolutely great in it. But it takes a long time to start. It takes a little bit of time to get into it, probably about 20-25 minutes, really. And then suddenly you're into it and it works. I think we would have a ball with this from a key aspect. It has a tremendous amount of key influence on it. And obviously they've taken from a lot of other, inspirations, all the way down from some great literature, all the way through, movies and everything else. But basically the story, in case you haven't heard, is a woman who realizes she's like a middle-aged Chinese housewife, business owner. She has kind of a very, very weak, nebbish husband. So she does all the work and has to do all the bills. And they're undergoing a tax audit, which is horrible when you're, not alone is a bad thing. But when you're an immigrant and don't even speak English that well, makes it even worse because you don't understand what they're asking for, referring to, that kind of stuff. But through a series of happenstance and things, she realizes that she starts exploring other universes of her. It's almost like they're saying, hey, Marvel, this is what the multiverse is before you guys even get there, kind of thing. But she realizes she can start manipulating those multiverse worlds and those different dimensions and different universes. It's very interesting the way it all ties together, and also has a lot of heart to it. It doesn't just devolve into a big, huge action chase sequence all the time. There's a lot of heart to it, a lot of character. I cannot pronounce his name, but Ki Hui Kwan is
Directed it?
No, he is actually her husband in it.
Oh, okay.
I think he just earned the Golden Globe this year for Best Actor. He was the kid in Goonies and the kid in Temple of Doom.
Yes, I knew that.
And now he is doing this part, and he is awesome in it because
I heard
he is also in all of these multiverses. He doesn't realize it really. Well, one of his selves realizes it, but he appears, obviously they're linked together in all of these universes, and seeing him play all of these different diverse characters and reactions to her is great. The director I'd never heard of before. His name is Dan Kwan, Kwan. And I looked up his credits, and a lot of them are from China. So I have not seen them.
I had a feeling that might be the case. I saw I can't think of the kid's name, the one that you mentioned that plays her husband, the kid from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Ki Hu Kwan.
Yeah. Right. I saw him accept his Golden Globe. I just happened to catch it. Yeah. Okay. And, Spielberg was in the audience. So, yes. I mean, it was very, very emotional and very cool. It was something very cool to witness.
Yeah. And like I said, this may air after the Oscars, but I know that there's a huge, it got like 17 nominations. Jamie Lee is nominated, mm-hmm. Michelle's nominated, he's nominated, the director, screenplay. So I'll be curious to see what it rakes in. I think it may be like another Parasite kind of.
It looks like it's the front runner.
Yeah. Which is unfortunate because I still haven't watched Spielberg's new one, and I really want to see that one. I think that one I'll probably enjoy better, even though
I've heard fiction. It's great too, but I've heard people don't like Michelle Williams' performance in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That might be interesting.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But this movie you're talking about, Everything All at Once.
Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Right. Yes. Would you classify it as science fiction?
Yes. I think you have to, because science is a crucial part of the entire story.
It looks to me like it's going to be like one of those Run Lola Run stories where different events in her life play out in different ways or something.
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. I don't think it's quite as concentric following the plot lines of these different, you made this decision, now you have to live with it kind of thing.
Okay.
This is much more of a personal character development story of everybody. So even Jamie Lee's character in it has a great story arc that goes through it, even though she's like a supporting character in it.
Okay.
So I highly recommend it for people. I do think it's worth a watch. I don't think it's everybody's taste, but neither was Parasite. So I think
I haven't seen that yet.
So I think both of those are I think that it's a good recommendation.
And Parasite gets classified in horror, doesn't it?
Correct. It's essentially a home invasion horror movie done in a different way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And wow.
But
what did you see it on? What streaming platform?
I actually rented it. I rented it from iTunes, Apple iTunes, where everyone should review us, But so I rented it from there.
Okay.
Because I said I've got to watch it. I have to watch it. So and it's a great photography, great, it's a good story. I recommend it. That's what I've been doing. What have you been doing?
What have I been doing? Well, guess where I wasn't.
You what? How did you ever do anything without them?
I was not in the hallways of Shudder because I recently got Paramount Plus to catch up on some stuff over there that I wanted to see. And I watched a little horror movie that you have talked about called Smile.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I have not seen it yet, but I want to, just because the trailers all creep me out.
It is a really good movie. Like any horror movie, there are some things where maybe there may be some questions of logic, but mostly it plays out really well. And this guy that directed it, his name is Parker Finn.
Mm.
It's his first movie. He's done
Wow.
2 shorts, one of which this movie is based on,
Okay.
and he wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
It is a deep dive, somewhat into what you would think is mental illness, but basically what it is it's about a doctor that's a psychiatrist or psychologist, can't remember which, and she is played by Soshi Bacon.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Bacon and Kira Sedgwick's daughter. And first and foremost, I have to say she is great.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Blown away by how good she was. And a lot of times I have associated this movie with the poster or that girl you see in the picture behind me.
Right.
And that is not Soshi Bacon. That is just one of her patients that is in the movie briefly.
Right.
This movie is about the doctor. And well, basically, here's a synopsis. After witnessing a bizarre traumatic incident involving a patient, Dr. Rose Cotter starts experiencing frightening occurrences that she can't explain. As an overwhelming terror begins taking over her life, she must confront her troubling past in order to survive and escape a horrifying new reality. So you're deep diving into this doctor's personality.
Okay.
More than the patient's. But I would highly recommend this movie. I would especially recommend it as a double feature with It Follows, because it is really similar to
That's
It
what
Follows.
it reminded me of in the trailer. That's
Yeah.
But you know what? I did not think that was Sosie Bacon. From the trailer, I thought that the lead was, what's her name?
Hilary Swank.
Yes.
She does look like Hilary Swank.
So much like Hilary Swank.
Mhm.
I was going, okay. And then you said Sosie Bacon. I said, no, that's Hilary. Oh, okay.
No, yeah, it is. And she's actually in a commercial right now with Kevin that's like a car commercial, because Dennis, my husband, is a car nut, and he was showing me this commercial the other day with them in it. But
well, looking her up, I had forgotten. She is in 13 Reasons Why, which is an incredibly good miniseries that came out a few years
I
ago.
remember that. That was like on Netflix, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And she was Sky in that. So
Okay.
she had a great role in that as well. And that was, yeah. So it's on my list. I wanted to see it. The trailers all, like I said, look really good for it.
Well, the cinematography is great. That's why I was kind of blown away that this is his first guy's film. I should look up the cinematographer and see what else he's worked on, because the mood and the dread he creates just with photography is amazing. It will remind you of It Follows. It's very, very similar. For some reason, it's only scoring 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. I would have given it a little bit higher. But for those of you out there, it is streaming on Paramount Plus right now. So
and you can
go
just
watch it.
Pick it up just for nothing or whatever.
Yeah. And watch Star Trek Strange New Worlds in The Stand at the same time, like me.
I'm looking up Charlie Saroff, Sarroff was the cinematographer for that. And he also did one in 2020 called Relic.
I've heard of that, but
I've heard of, but haven't seen anything about, and done a bunch of television and stuff, but he looks promising. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you will like this movie. I would definitely put it on our list of movies to cover for sure.
Okay. All right. So we follow a doctor and her hauntings, I guess, sort of thing. Whatever.
Yeah.
So
yeah. How are we going to segue from that? Mental psychoanalysis.
That's a good, 7 degrees of bacon.
Yeah, it's definitely 7 degrees from what we're covering today.
Because we are covering, I guess, paranoia and things aren't what they seem, and running away from things. Because that's what this movie does for like a good 80% of this film. We are in science fiction territory today. Yay! And I'm happy. We are going back to 1990 to a film called Total Recall. It was just a brief history. It was directed by Paul Verhoeven. It is based on a short story by Philip K. Dick called We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. But the screenplay is credited with Ron Shusett and Dan O'Bannon, who both have huge, incredible keys in their background. The cast includes, of course, everyone's favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sharon Stone, Michael Ironside is in it. Rachel, I think it's Ticotin. It might be Ticotin, but I'm not sure. Ticotin is the female lead in it, who Tim was getting confused with Mercedes Rule, which I can readily understand and watching it. But it also has Ronnie Cox, Roy Brooksmith, who has a great cameo in it. I love his one scene or two scenes in it. A brief synopsis, and let me see if I can.
Good luck with that.
A brief synopsis is you follow a construction worker. This is in the future. It's like, I think it's 2380, I think is the time frame. Anyway, set on Earth in the future. You're following a construction worker who has a wife and a normal life and all this kind of stuff, except he keeps having these nightmares and seems to be a little obsessed with Mars. Mars has been colonized by this point to an extent. It's basically used as a mining facility for a particular mineral, and I can't remember. Tritium is the mineral, and he is having nightmares about it. He is also fascinated with Mars, everything else. He ends up going to a company called Recall, and Recall can remember it for you wholesale. They will implant a vacation into your brain, and for X number of credits, 300 to 500 credits, you suddenly have this memory, and it feels like it was real and it really happened to you, but you never spent the money and then had to go and do it. Instead of a normal vacation, he decides, hey, I'm going to go to Mars. Let's do that. I've always wanted to, and I keep having nightmares about it. Let's do that. And they upsell him on a special package, which is not only can you go to Mars, why would you just want to go to Mars as a tourist? The salesman says, why not go as someone else, like an athlete or a celebrity, or maybe, a secret agent. A secret agent, how much does that cost? So he is implanted. However, when they start to do the implantation of the memory, the false memory in him, it triggers something else in his mind. And it turns out that he actually is a Martian secret agent who has been brainwashed and wiped a little bit. His wife is not his wife. She is another agent. And he begins this huge process of trying to get to Mars, where he comes up against the evil Cohagen, who is the god emperor of Mars. He's the owner of the mining colony, and he's a ruthless dictator setting in his own little regime there. And it ends with kind of a strange climax in that, spoiler alert, Mars gets oxygen. Is the big finale of the movie. Had
really
you seen
fast.
Had you seen this movie before?
I have.
No.
I don't remember the first time I saw it. It was either on videotape or I want to say I went to the theater and saw it. I really do. But I was living in Georgia at the time. It was after I had left Morristown. So
I saw it in the theater. I did see it in the theater. I was curious about it just because of Shusett and O'Bannon, mostly. And it was a Philip K. Dick story, which,
right.
Blade Runner turned out really good based on a Philip K. Dick story. So maybe this one will be good too. Did you like it? Are you a fan of this particular film?
I want to say that I enjoyed it at the time because it is a mind fuck of a movie with lots of twists.
Yeah.
But on second viewing, I've decided two things.
Yes.
One is I don't think I'm a Paul Verhoeven fan. For some reason, I don't tend to like his movies, and I'm not sure I can put my finger on why.
It's curious because if you go to cinema purists and say Paul Verhoeven, the first thing they'll say is violence. That's his trademark. Starship Troopers, Total Recall, of course. This movie got an X rating when it was originally.
I'm not surprised, especially for Michael Ironside's death. I was like, wow, that's pretty gruesome.
Well, and several others. I mean, you know, the one that I have in one of my favorite scenes, if you can say, oh, it's a favorite scene because it's so violent, is the escalator fight when, you know, Schwarzenegger's
They're
character
killing everybody.
Yeah, they're just spraying into kids, women, whatever, and plus the fact that Hauser is holding a body in front of him like a shield, not only once but twice, and that guy's just getting riddled with bullets.
Right.
You know, and Paul Verhoeven, even in the documentary, says, "Yeah, I did think of him as just a meat bag. It's just a meat bag." So
yeah. Anyway, I can't put my finger on it. I know there it may have something to do with hypermasculinity. I don't know, and playing. I don't know. I really don't know because I'm not a fan of Basic Instinct. I'm not a fan of RoboCop. And it's not, I mean, I don't mind violence, but you said that as if I gravitate towards it, and I don't.
No,
unless it's
just usually it's usually a horror staple is violence or graphic violence.
Right.
So that's
but if I want to see a violent movie, it needs to be like a Tarantino. There needs to be some logic and some good dialogue behind it. The other reason why I was not particularly fond of the second viewing of Total Recall is I don't know when the last time I saw an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie was, but he is horrible. And I mean, he makes Keanu Reeves look like Laurence Olivier. He is a really bad actor. And when I was watching this, I was like, is he reading cue cards? Because this is bad. So I think the main reason I don't like this particular film, because I do like the story and I do like the plot twist, and the special effects, though dated now, were very high tech at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Watching it now, it looks very dated. But
for a while, this was the most expensive movie ever made.
I'm not surprised.
Yes. And mostly it was also, it's a great, what's the way he was saying it? This is a great definition of development hell.
Oh, I read all that. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of trivia history to this movie process. I mean, like a 10-year history of trying to get this movie made. Going back to Verhoeven, I can't really agree that I don't like Verhoeven because there's something that is kind of compelling about every movie he does, even Showgirls, you know. I don't, it's a terrible movie, but I can watch it, you know, sort of
people
thing.
love it. It's like Mommy Dearest. They flock to it because it's so bad.
I think the only one that really works, I think, overall with all of his movies is Hollow Man. Hollow Man kind of works for me as I can watch it. The effects are good. The action works. It's not just a bunch of action and chase scenes thrown together. Kevin Bacon's great in it. It's got
I've seen cast. It, but I don't remember it.
It's basically his version of the Invisible Man.
Right. Right.
But it's Verhoeven, which is, you know, what would you do if you were the Invisible Man? Well, you would rape the girl that lives in the apartment complex.
Say that's just,
you know, that's Paul Verhoeven. But so, yeah, I mean, he takes a little bit of getting used to it. You may be right about the hypermasculinity because that goes into everything, like his take on corporations in RoboCop and corporate structure and all of that kind of stuff.
Well, and the women are I don't know that the women are that strong. I mean, they're if they are strong, they're played as villains usually.
Yes, agreed. Even the strong women in like Starship Troopers, they break the lead's heart and they just do their own thing and yada
Basic
yada.
Instinct.
Basic Instinct. Yeah. So the women, interesting. That's it might be interesting to delve into just a Verhoeven oeuvre and see those kind of components that he puts in all of them, because they're always hyper violent, or at least the violence shown in it is something that is uncomfortable violence.
Right.
So interesting.
But I do like his casting. I just don't like Schwarzenegger. I think a lot of the other people in this movie are great.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've always said there's only two movies that I've liked Schwarzenegger in. That's Predator and Terminator. And both of them because he basically has maybe 10 lines of dialogue.
Oh, that makes sense.
Well, Conan's not bad, but there are entire scenes in Conan where he has to act and he doesn't do good.
Okay.
And it kind of, you remember it for the entire movie kind of thing.
I am bad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Bad actor. Grace Jones, smash me with your head.
Yeah. Oh, no, we're not talking Destroyer. We're talking Conan the Barbarian, the first one, the one that John Milius did the script for. So yes, good one. But, but anyway, this one was originally developed by Ron Shusett. He had the idea. It went into development. And did you, in your research, learn who was going to direct it originally?
Yeah, well, there's been 7 directors attached to it.
Yes.
But the one that had the most contact with it before was Cronenberg.
Yes.
Yeah.
David Cronenberg was going to direct it, actually did a bunch of pre-production. He's actually credited as the person who added the mutant angle to it, because the mutant angle is not in the short story. So all of that comes from David Cronenberg.
I would have loved to have seen his version of this.
Yes, it would have been interesting.
Yeah.
But he kind of turned it down after it went into turnaround with De Laurentiis, because it was going to be a De Laurentiis project. De Laurentiis basically went bankrupt, all of that kind of stuff. But he ended up
Cronenberg didn't get along with Shusett either, the screenplay writer.
And he turned it down in order to do The Fly. Thank goodness.
Thank God.
That's one of his best movies.
Because that is a great movie.
Yes. Yes. But Schwarzenegger was the champion of this movie. He ended up getting attached to it, wanted to do it, stayed tenacious about wanting to do this movie. And finally, when he had the clout to do it, he pushed Mario Kassar to produce it. He pushed Verhoeven. He actually called Verhoeven out of the blue and says, "I love your movies. We need to work together. You know me, and I know you. We work and just do this." There
were other factors. Dino went bankrupt.
Yeah.
And he had already spent $6 or $8 million in pre-production cost on this. So he was willing to sell it for $3 million to Carolco, who ended up doing the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Carolco was the production company. Because I remember as soon as it came on, I was like, this looks like a Carolco movie. And sure as shit, their logo popped up.
Yeah.
How does that happen? Is it like film stock? I don't know. It's weird.
We just know. We can tell. We've watched so many VHS movies.
Yeah, we are sad people.
Well, it's the same. I'm the same thing with like TriStar. As soon as that little Pegasus poked his little nose around, I know.
Right.
It's TriStar. But yeah, I mean, going back, it was this actually, according to a documentary I watched, Shusett actually had the idea before Alien. In 1976, I mean, even before that, he had the original idea, wanted to do this short story.
Well, before Cronenberg, Richard Rush and Bruce Beresford were both considered to direct it.
And both would have been great. Rush would have been very interesting to do this movie because I love Stuntman a lot.
Mm-hmm. I knew that was one of your favorites.
And it's a complex story. So he would have been interesting. Beresford, I don't know if he could have handled the action. I think it would have been a much more talky movie with Beresford if he had done it. I think Cronenberg, of course, it would have been a much more body horror. Is your mind and your body in rebellion against each other? Kind of story.
His concept, he said, was more on the whole idea of the memories and erasing people's realities. Yeah, it would have been more psychological, I think.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see, like you said, I would love to see Beresford's version of the script. I'd love to see Cronenberg's version of the script.
Would you like to see Louis Teague's version because he was attached to it?
No.
Cujo could have popped in.
No. We don't need to see Lewis's version.
I mean, he was one of De Laurentiis's babies. So.
Oh yeah. It ended up being shot in Mexico City, which I thought was interesting. Mm-hmm. But a lot was at the time. It wasn't released until 1990, like I said. And I look back, 1990 was a huge year for movies.
That summer, 50 movies were released. 50.
Oh my gosh.
And like 8 of them they were expecting to top the charts for the entire summer. And that included the sequel to 48 Hours, the sequel to Die Hard, that Days of Thunder, Back to the Future 3. I mean, there was a lot of blockbusters when this came out.
Well, and even, just genre-esque stuff, Edward Scissorhands, Misery, Ghost, it's just huge. Tremors, Arachnophobia, Jacob's Ladder. I was going, oh my God.
Yeah.
They did It. We were off camera just talking about It.
Right.
It was released in
the miniseries with
yes.
Tim Curry. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. There was a lot. 1990 was a big year.
And then this movie, one of the huge keys from it, but while we're talking about production and everything else, like you said, one of the detriments to this movie is Schwarzenegger in that role, and the fact that he can't act and everything else. So obviously, Len Wiseman, a director, said, "Let's redo that." So they made a sequel to this in 2012, and Colin Farrell played the lead.
I have not seen it.
I watched about 2 or 3 scenes of it together, even a compilation, like a YouTube thing. He plays Quaid in it, and he's not bad.
Oh, I like him.
The direction is not bad. It's got a cool cast. I mean, it's got Kate Beckinsale and Jessica Biel. They play.
Okay.
Kate Beckinsale plays Lori, the wife, and Jessica Biel plays Melina.
Okay.
But it derails really quickly from the few scenes that I saw, and it's got horrible reviews. So they didn't stay. And I don't know if it's getting horrible reviews because people say, "Oh, he's not Arnold," or what. But it was just getting bad reviews for it. So unfortunately, what else do I have in my notes? Hold on.
I have a question, and this is totally going to derail us, but I'm curious.
I have a bunch of questions for you.
Well, this is about the short story. We Can
Yes.
Remember It For You Wholesale, written by
Yes.
Philip K. Dick in 1966.
Mhm.
Do you think he was a musical or Barbra Streisand fan?
Not that I'm aware of. Why?
Because in 1962, a musical debuted called I Can Get It For You Wholesale, and it starred a very young Barbra Streisand. It's what put her on the map, and it was based on a novel written in 1937. So I'm like, is he making a riff on that title? Because it sure seems like it. If one's in
Probably.
62 and the other 66.
Probably. I mean, I could imagine that he would. He made a lot of pun type things in his titles.
Okay.
Do androids dream of electric sheep?
Right.
Sort of thing. So I think he played off of that a lot. There are major differences to the short story.
Yeah, I figured. I was just curious. I was curious if he had maybe was making a pun on that title. So
I've always liked Dick's work, but I've also thought that he was probably a paranoid schizophrenic, literally, because so much of his content is paranoia, is about my mind isn't my mind, my reality isn't my reality, what I'm thinking isn't what I'm thinking, the government's in control of everything, all of these things are happening, there's other entities that are controlling my perception. That seemed to be a running theme in all of his stuff.
I associate him as being like a hippie.
I think it's more than that, because
is it because he reminds me of like a Theodore Sturgeon, and they were around the same period. But
and I seem to remember reading that he actually, was one of those that went away for a while. He like hid and didn't want to be around people and wouldn't do press conferences and wouldn't do all of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Reclusive. He died young. I think he was in just his early like 50s, late 40s when he died. But he's always been a real, and not that I don't like it. I really like all of his stories, and I like most of the movies based on his stories, because they do deal with that whole, perception is just your perception sort of thing. And it comes from your reality. I did have a question. So let's think about before we get into scenes or details or stuff like that. One of them's kind of fun. So the first one is, if recall really existed, would you do it? Would you have them implant a vacation or a memory into your mind?
I guess it would depend on how safe it is.
Okay. Do you think it would ever be safe? That
I don't
somebody's
know.
messing
I
with
mean,
your
I
mind
never
and-
had laser corrective surgery on my eyes because I've known of someone that lost sight in one eye because of it.
Right.
So I would approach it from the same standpoint. Is this
Okay.
going to fuck me up? Then no, I'm not going to do it.
Well, and if you were going to do it, what would be your ultimate vacation?
Oh, I'm sure it would be sex with some movie star or something. Yeah. Of my choice.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. It's Tim and Captain Kirk having a date. Yes. Okay, that's curious. I was just curious about that. I don't know if I would. I probably would. I probably would do it. And my vacation, to me, though, my vacation would have to be something like kind of like Quaid. It would have to be uber outlandish. It's not going to be just, oh, go to Disney World or, oh, go to the Bahamas for a week or something. It would have to be, you're orbiting Saturn and, or something, which I thought was interesting that they mentioned. Why don't you do Saturn instead? Saturn's a better vacation.
Yeah, no one likes Mars. It's got a bad rap.
And the big question from this, which comes out if you do any research on this movie at all and everything else, is how much of this movie is real? What do you think? Because there's a whole subculture that believes that from the minute he sits down in the chair at recall, and they start to do from the minute they start to do the procedure and recall, nothing else in the movie is real. Everything else is actually in his mind, sitting in that chair at recall.
In other words, the plot that's revealed of him actually being someone else is all part of the memory implant.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, I could buy that.
Yeah.
Easy.
Well, and I can buy it, but just because so many clues are given all the way through it.
Mm-hmm.
To that. I mean, what happens to him is exactly what the salesman tells him. Mm-hmm. You'll be a secret agent. There'll be people chasing you. You'll be fighting for your life. It'll be some huge mystery that you'll have to solve. And all this literally happens to him.
Yeah, and it gives Verhoeven free reign to shoot people on escalators. So
to do whatever. Yeah, to take that element and say, this would never, why the hell would these guys just shoot basically
innocent
everybody?
People. Yeah.
Right. For me, my logic mind is just like it was in Outland. Why would you have projectile weapons on Mars when you have enclosed domes? That makes no freaking sense. Those would be outlawed. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't even have arrows because,
or rocks.
But yeah, there's a lot of people that believe that this entire movie is in his head.
Okay.
There are other people that believe that sorry, I said that wrong. From the time he's in the chair, everything else is an implanted memory, essentially. But there are other people that believe that from the very first image of this, it's all in his mind. Even the stuff waking up at home in bed and with Sharon Stone and all that kind of stuff is still part of the thing. And the reason for that is Jerry Goldsmith uses a thematic of memory. It's this kind of weird song and tinkle tinkle kind of melody that he uses. He only uses it 3 times. He uses it at the very beginning of the movie when Quaid wakes up. He uses it when he first sits down in the chair at recall, and uses it at the very end when they kiss with the sun behind him. And there are people that think that that's a clue, just like the Jaws theme is a clue the shark's there. This is a clue that this isn't real. None of this is real. So found that very interesting.
That's deep.
One of my big clues is when they're implanting the memory, he has to pick his girl, right? And he picks the girl that, ironically, the image they show is the image from his dream, which kind of ties into the theory that, well, yeah, why would he remember that if he's never seen that before, never been to recall? And he asks for her to be athletic, sexy, and demure. And she turns out to be, of course. But while he's also going under, the assistant, not the lady, but the technician guy, looks at the card and says, "Blue skies over Mars." Oh, this is a new one. Why would there ever be blue skies on Mars? So,
Air.
Right. So, which ties into the whole thing
Right.
at the end, sort of thing. So, yeah. So there are a lot of people that believe that this is a mind screw from the very beginning.
I mean, it is. I mean, they build it as that, if I remember right, when the commercials were out for it in the trailer.
Yeah. The trailer's very, your mind is your only way of reality. And,
Well,
it's the
and I
most
seem to
important.
recall Schwarzenegger saying, "You won't be able to guess what happens in this movie. This movie is a mind fuck," or whatever. Yeah.
Well, I remember at the time, it must have been the time at the house or whatever, but we had put the VHS in. And then after it was over, all of us sat around debating the whole thing of first of all, is he Hauser or is he Quaid? Is he really Hauser? Do you believe that he is really a friend of Cohagen and this was all set up? That's the first question. Or the first kind of,
I mean, it just
twist.
depends on your interpretation of the film. I mean, if you want the movie to be, oh yeah, he discovers that he really is a superhero, so to speak, then that's the version you're going to go with.
But is he a good guy or a bad guy? That's the thing.
Right.
And so we had that huge debate, and people, like you said, it's interpretation. I think people see it both ways.
Well, he was a bad guy, but he's converted by Melina by falling in love with her and the resistance or whatever.
Right. But that's what I mean. That's why I love this kind of storytelling because of the layers.
It's multi-layered for sure.
Yeah, because he was Hauser, who was working with Cohagen, found the artifact, fell in love with Melina, turned, got caught. They erased his memory, sent him down as Quaid, and then we're just watching him and everything else. And then he frees himself, awakens his latent personality, and is trying to free and liberate, help the rebels liberate Mars.
Yeah. I mean, if I was going to interpret the story, the dreams are what help him realize it subconsciously that he is not who he is. And that's why he says, I want to go to Mars. And he goes to the place and then things start clicking and things start happening. And he made a videotape for himself,
But then in the screenplay, he makes 2 videotapes. And the first one is to send him to Mars. The second one is, sorry, buddy, I screwed you. I really wanted to do this to you the whole time. And I'm a bad guy. And I'm still a bad guy.
Right.
And I need my memory back. So I need my body back. So forget all this Quaid shit. You're really a bad guy. And I thought that was a great twist.
Yeah.
On top of all of this. So it's just really good. That was probably one of my favorite scenes just because it was a twist. It was such a cool twist in that. Do you have any favorite scenes or scenes you really liked or scenes that stand out?
Sorry, I was looking back at all the writers on this movie because there were just as many writers as there were directors.
Yeah, everybody had a hand in it. Yeah.
One of them came in last minute. I think he was like the cleaner, and his name is Gary Goldman, and he did Big Trouble in Little China.
Yep.
With
John Carpenter. Movie. Yeah.
So he may have added some of the humor to this because there is a lot of humor in this movie. Which is also a little strange for me, I guess, with sci-fi. One of my keys would be The Fifth Element because they have the same kind of flavor in places.
I have that key. Yeah.
Well, back to what you were asking me about scenes. Some of the special effects, especially practical effects, are amazing, and they are Rob Bottin, who, of course, did The Thing. So, like that one that's pictured behind me, where he's sticking that thing up his nose. Every time I see that, it freaks me out. I'm like, oh my god, it looks so real,
and it's golf ball size. Yeah,
yes,
it's huge.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
seems like he would notice that.
Yeah. What about that weird costume that he puts on? That's the big fat lady.
Yeah. I was again going, was that in the suitcase? Where did you get that?
Where did he get that? And why did the head explode? And would you wear an explosive device on your head that this potentially could explode?
That was one of those where I was going, okay, this is a fantasy. This isn't real because none of that makes logical sense that you would do that. But I agree with you. A lot of my scenes involve Rob Bottin.
And that's one of them. Yeah.
Like the reveal of the arm
Mhm.
that he's a mutant and everything. I
Mhm.
thought that was really cool. I like all of the mutants shown the way it's always one side of their face is messed up or
Right.
burned or genetically altered, I guess would be a way of
Mhm.
doing it. I don't think they played up the point that Cohagen did that kind of on purpose. He starved he made inferior domes and they got solar radiation poisoning. That's why they're mutants. I think that needed to be just a hair more. I mean, Ronnie Cox is like chewing the scenery this entire movie anyway.
Well, and yeah, some of this story is very twisty. It's very convoluted, and I for the average non-sci-fi moviegoer, I would think this movie would be confusing.
I would too. He meets Melina and she kicks him in the nuts, sort of thing.
Mhm.
And yet she's supposed to be his girlfriend kind
Right.
of thing. And she thinks he's turned. And if you go with the Hauser story, then yes, he has. He turned himself to turn himself back,
Right.
Yeah. I think the two fights with Sharon Stone are both really good. I think the fight in the apartment's really good. I think the fight with Melina is really good.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the scenes I always remember from this. I always remember, like I said, I called it meat bag on the escalator, but holding up the body to be your human shield, literally. I think again another routine moment. The birth of Quatlu is a really cool sequence. The way his
Right.
voice changes and everything, and having this, what do you call that? It's like a Siamese twin or
Right.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really well done, I thought.
Um, uh, as far as visually, I'm having trouble coming up with one. I don't like the struggles for air at the end. Ronnie Cox obviously is not going to survive, and his eyes are bulging out of his head. But I'm like, I don't. That all happened. There's two things that really bother me. That bothers me a lot because they're playing up the suspense when they would have suffocated almost instantly.
Yes.
Don't like that. Another thing I don't like is that Benny being an agent for Cohagen seems to me to be completely out of left field.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah.
If it had been,
he's a
even
cab driver they happen upon. I'm like,
well, he was kind of looking. You could give him the fact that he was stationed there, to kind of find him, but there needed to be a motivation there too. So it needed to be, he even said my 5 kids or whatever.
He's always talking about his kids. Yeah.
Right. Instead of saying, I ain't even, you saw through me, man. I ain't even married, blah, blah, blah. He should have said, yeah. And Cohagen has them all in jail right now. And then suddenly now we go, oh, now that makes sense. That's why you're turning against your own kind.
Right.
Is because you're being blackmailed or threatened or something.
Right.
But yeah, I agree with that. Mm-hmm. And then I know where you're going because I have it in my notes. Wow, instant terraforming. That usually that takes decades.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay, there's going to be air as soon as they get exposed.
Oh yeah,
within 30 seconds, and they'll be fine, and they can kiss at the end.
Yeah, no,
you talk about fantasy. Yeah, that makes me think. Yeah, this whole movie is a fantasy. It ain't real.
And I'm sorry if your eyes were bulging out of your head that bad a few seconds ago. You're not going to feel very good.
No, and they're not going to recede back in.
No, it's gonna sting a little bit. There's going to be yeah. I have that one too.
So, but those scenes stick out. One scene that always sticks out, and this is for no reason at all, except just I thought it was cool, is and I remember this looking very fresh when I saw it in 1990, and now it looks very dated. But it's when he's having breakfast and there's a television on the wall.
Yeah,
the wall is the television.
Yeah, the whole wall. And at one point, she makes the entire wall the television, and then it just recedes to the
And
news.
I always thought, well, that's really cool. But now when you look at it, it looks so fake.
Now we look at it and go, well, and now we go, oh, we have bigger televisions now.
Yeah.
And they're flat panels and they go on the wall. Yeah. I have Michael. I'm just looking at notes now for stuff before we go into casting. I've got Michael Ironsides has made an entire career out of being angry. Because literally this Starship Troopers, scanners, everything. He
yeah.
screams and yells and is mad.
And I think he's a
everything.
great actor.
He is great. Yeah, I like him.
Yeah.
If
This movie was budgeted at 65 million.
Yes, at the
it
time in 1990.
Yeah, and it made 25 million just on the opening weekend, and it went on to make 261 million.
Oh, it was a huge hit.
It was huge. It was
Yeah.
one of those top 8 in that blockbuster summer I was talking about.
Oh yeah, it was huge. I have some other character like questions. Of course, all my
Sure.
logic questions in there, like, why do you have projectile weapons and domes? If you have a tracker on him and you're obviously tracking him, why are you running around shooting everywhere? Because you obviously know where he's going. You've got a tracker on him, kind of thing. There's no point to just rush, run everywhere. Got to catch it, whatever. Same way when they get to Mars, why they're rushing around. There's a lot of chases in this that to me got old really fast. It was a lot of chasing, just a lot of running and chasing. And I'm like going, okay, got it.
Well, that was one of the reasons Cronenberg didn't like the script, is because they wanted this movie to be like Indiana Jones. They said they wanted a fast adventure movie, and that was not what Cronenberg wanted to direct. He's never done that.
Right. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
And I also have in my notes that one of the reasons Dan O'Bannon had a problem with Paul Verhoeven was he took out a lot of the humor that O'Bannon had added to the script. And instead added a lot more violence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did see that he did not get along with O'Bannon, or that O'Bannon didn't like him.
I also have another thing near the end that bothered me, which is, other than instant terraforming, but before that, it's this whole, stand here while I reveal my master plan. Here's a videotape from Hauser telling you how you're screwed. And sorry, buddy, I need my body back. Kind of thing. Okay, let's take him and the girl down to our recall chairs. Let's lock them in. Let's take a final moment so that she can spit in my face, and so that Ironsides or Richter can hit Quaid in the face, or Hauser. Then let's go back to our office, turn around and say, okay, go kill him. What? I don't understand. Why would you go to all the trouble of taking them down to the recall chairs and doing all this shit if you're just going to kill them? It made no sense to me that then he goes back to kill them.
The whole escape from those chairs is kind of ludicrous too. When he pulls his hand up and stabs the guy and with his
breaks up the whole thing, and then can beat up 4 other people in the room with one arm. And then the other one I have is, and so not only does Benny hang around the Hilton just at the perfect time.
Yeah.
He also decides to just get in a mine vehicle and wait in front of this tunnel until you show up.
Right.
So again, are these all explained by the fact that this is a scripted, in your head adventure that does not have to make real sense because it's an implanted memory?
The question is, did Verhoeven say, I can do whatever I want to because it's that?
Maybe. Or did they say, that makes up for all the plot holes? We'll just ignore that and just let people assume what they want.
I got a free pass for a plot hole movie.
There you go. Plot hole movie coming up. Here you go.
Big time.
What about casting? You hate Schwarzenegger, but you did like Melina, right? The girl, Rachel.
I do like Melina. I like everybody else pretty much. Before I get there, one last thing on Cronenberg. This is just a thing of trivia that I have that I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
It was originally to be directed by David Cronenberg, who we know, of course, from The Fly and Dead Ringers and The Brood, which we have covered.
Shivers.
He had turned down a chance to direct The Fly in order to work on this film. He was replaced on The Fly by a man named Robert Bierman, but Bierman later pulled out of that project due to the death of his daughter. Around the same time, Cronenberg left Total Recall when it was placed into Turnaround, which left him free to direct The Fly. So he was bouncing between this and The Fly multiple times, or at least on The Fly. So
on The Fly.
Yeah. And that is far superior science fiction to me. That movie.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
far superior. I mean, this is still science fiction, but this is science fiction with a chase element. You know, The Fly is much more, even though this one claims to be more cerebral, The Fly is much more cerebral and personal than this one.
Definitely more personal. And it's
Oh, yeah.
also very similar to that movie I discussed last week, Spring, A Love Story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be afraid. Be very
Be
afraid.
very afraid. Be afraid. Be very afraid.
Sorry, could you read that again?
Okay. Casting. This film was originally going to be an intellectual thriller, I mentioned, directed by Bruce Beresford, who
Yep.
directed Driving Miss Davy. Guess who was going to star in it? His version.
You said Driving Miss Davy.
Did I say Davy? Oh, sorry.
Okay,
Driving
never
Miss
mind.
Daisy.
Yes. Who was going to
Guess who
star
he
in
had?
it?
Yeah. Guess
I
who
do.
he picked?
Morgan Freeman. I don't know.
Matthew Broderick.
I would no, because you wouldn't have the flip. You wouldn't believe that he was ever a secret agent on Mars. You could believe he was a fantasy, having a fantasy of a secret agent on Mars, but you've got to believe that this guy was a real secret, almost like Jason Bourne.
I
Which is
think
one
it
of
would have
my-
been great if he'd have played it very similarly to Ferris Bueller, where he's just trying to get out of things all the time.
Well, then it might have been funnier, yes, but I don't know about. definitely
It's funny that
better.
you mentioned that. You're right. I don't think Matthew Broderick would have been great, but not Christopher. William Hurt was who David Cronenberg had chosen, and I think William Hurt
Yes.
would have been great.
Would have been
in,
great.
You know, an intellectual, more heavy
yeah.
sci-fi version of this film.
Look at Altered States. Look at
Yeah.
how complex he had that character in Altered
Right.
States. He would be great in this.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
William Hurt and Cronenberg would have been a great combo in anything, and I don't think they ever worked together.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Other people that were up for Quaid, Patrick Swayze was signed to play in the movie when it was in pre-production with Bruce Beresford as director.
Yeah.
However, when Dino De Laurentiis' company went bankrupt, as I said, Schwarzenegger heard about it and persuaded Carolco to buy it. Another one that was cast, and this is one of the reasons why Cronenberg was out, is Richard Dreyfuss was also cast at one point to play Quaid, excuse me.
I saw that too. And I have the same issue. I couldn't see him.
No, he's the
doing
older version of Matthew Broderick,
it.
basically. Yeah, it's just not good. Who else? Christopher Reeve was offered the role, but turned it down.
Definitely could see that.
Yeah.
He would. Yeah. I could definitely have seen
Well,
that.
he could also play up. What would have been interesting is Schwarzenegger can't play insecure, and Christopher Reeve could.
Yes.
So to
Well
find out that you're a super spy when you're used to being a construction worker, he could have done that. Schwarzenegger can't do but one thing. He
Yes.
can only play the hero and the muscle man fighter guy. Christopher Reeve could have played that differently, and that would have been interesting. Other people,
and Reeve can also do, we know from Death Trap, Reeve can also do that dark tinge too, where he
Yes.
could be an evil character.
he could have easily turned
Yeah.
into the dark side of Quaid
Hauser.
as well. Hauser, yeah.
Mhm.
Jeff Bridges was considered.
Another
Mark
person
Harmon.
who has those layers. Mark Harmon, maybe, I don't know, younger. Yeah.
I think this was when they were cutting budget because they went to TV and said, "Oh, let's get Mark Harmon or Tom Selleck,"
Yeah.
because he was up for it too.
No.
But anyway, those are the ones that I have for Quaid. Melina, as we know, was played by Rachel Ticotin,
Mhm.
who I don't know, but looks incredibly familiar to me. Two other actresses were considered for that role. One was Alexandra Paul. Do you know who that is?
No, I do not know that name. I can look it up.
I'm looking right now. She looks familiar, but she was in movies I didn't see, like Dragnet and Spy Hard.
Okay.
So I don't know her, but the other one was Nicole Kidman. She would have been fairly
She would have
new to
been,
this scene.
yeah, that would have been good for her.
And she was in
Yeah.
Days of Thunder, wasn't she? And that was out that summer.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all I have for Melina. Sharon Stone, I guess this part was written for her. No one else was up for it.
Well, who
Sharon
could
Stone's
compete?
great.
She's great. And this was great for her.
Mhm.
I like the fact, like you just said, she's able to go instantly from that nice, sweet da 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 to, everything in your life's a lie, Quaid. Kind of mean, vicious,
Uber
sort of.
villain bitch. And that's
Yeah.
why she ended up in Basic Instinct, I'm sure.
And she's uber sexy. So
She's very pretty, and she's
Yeah.
so young in this movie. Even though she's got leftover 80s fashion in some of her scenes, which is kind of funny with the leg warmers and that kind of stuff.
Well, and my notes say that Schwarzenegger always referred to her as Terminator 2 because she was so strong in the fight scenes.
Yeah,
it was so good. Yeah,
I could see that.
Yep.
You know what? Let me go back to her. There she is.
Yeah.
Ronnie Cox is in this movie. He plays Cohagen.
Mm-hmm.
I like Ronnie Cox.
And
I'm trying to think of the only thing I can recall him in right now is RoboCop, but I know I've seen him in things I like.
Well, he had a multi-episode arc in Next Generation as a Commodore, and he was really, really good.
I think what it is I always have associated him with Clu Gulager, who is in Return of the Living Dead and one of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And I just, for some reason, I'm seeing Ronnie Cox, but I do like Ronnie Cox.
Well, Beverly Hills Cop, he was in that too. He always plays that leader who can be a real strong ass if he has to.
Right.
Kind of, yeah.
Right. There was someone else considered for this role that we both like better, though.
Who?
Ian Holm.
Oh, see, he would have played the complexity. It wouldn't have been that one note, I'm a dictator kind of villain.
I'm a bad guy. He would have been more, covert. Like,
I wonder if that casting
Ash.
came from like Shusett because of Alien.
Maybe.
Yeah. That would
him
be
or
interesting.
O'Bannon.
Either one.
Yeah. 3 people from this movie are in Starship Troopers, which we have covered on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another Paul Verhoeven movie.
Mm-hmm.
They are Michael Ironside, who, and I like all 3 of these guys. Michael Ironside, Marshall Bell, and Dean Norris.
Yep.
Are all in this movie. Dean Norris plays the mutant.
Yes.
That at first is like defensive of Melina, but then ends up helping Melina and Quaid get away.
Right.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't really recognize him at all.
You wouldn't recognize him at all. But for those of you out there that don't recognize him from the picture behind me, he was the brother-in-law on Breaking Bad. He's great.
And Marshall Bell, like you said, Marshall Bell is great and been in a bunch as well.
Well, Marshall Bell's a very big genre actor. I know him mostly from Nightmare on Elm Street 2, where he plays sort of a sadistic gym teacher.
Yep.
And then, of course, we know Michael Ironside from the Cronenberg movie and Starship.
V. He was in V.
I never watched V.
Oh, dude. It was not a bad childhood's end kind of making there. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got others that I don't really have any information on. Michael Campion played Helm. Roy Brocksmith played Dr. Edgemar. Ray Baker played McClane. I do have an interesting note on that. I did not know, but Schwarzenegger turned Die Hard down. Thank God.
Good.
Because Bruce Willis ended up getting that part. But that is why that character's name is McClane, because they did it as an in-joke.
Oh, okay.
Because the character McClane is obviously the star of Die Hard.
Mm-hmm.
Really, that's all I have, except for one other thing. The movie Explorers has a slight connection to this movie. first it's kind of comical, so that's one connection. But the other is, I don't know if you realize this, but Johnny the Cab robot was played by Robert Picardo.
Robert Picardo. Yeah.
And he does a lot of the characters and crazy puppet monsters and explorers.
Well, and I have him as a key in this episode because he played the holographic doctor on Voyager. And he had that same kind of inflection. I'm what do I need to do for you today? Kind of attitude of the Johnny Cab. And there was something, when it comes down to it, there was something I said like 4 or 5 podcasts ago. And I said, when we get to Total Recall, you'll know what I mean, because it was referring to an autonomous cab. And I cannot remember what episode I mentioned that in. And I was looking back through my notes trying to figure
was
it out.
Was it like something like AI? Was there, because he does kind of look like
it might have been
AI.
It might have been, the way that puppet was done with the eyes and everything, almost like
I'm thinking of the pimp. I mean, of the what is that guy's name?
The actor?
Yes, Jude Law.
Jude Law.
Yeah. He does kind of remind me of Jude Law in AI a bit.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. But it's, I don't know.
It is what it is.
Yeah. It is what it is. Let's move on to awards. This movie won an Academy Award.
A Special Academy Award, yes.
It did. Special Achievement Award in Visual Effects. So go Rob Bottin.
Yep. Mostly due to Rob Bottin.
Yeah. I mean, it was his team, Eric Brevig, Tim McGovern, and Alex Funk as well. But Rob Bottin, I'm sure, was the leader of that crew. It was also nominated for Best Sound and Best Effects. Did not win. In BAFTAs, normally give genre things more attention. In this case, they didn't. They nominated it for effects, and it didn't win, and that was it.
Yeah.
The Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films, Saturn Awards, gave it Best Film or Best Science Fiction Film and Best Costumes. However, they nominated it for actor, supporting actress, director, writing, music, makeup, and special effects. So they nominated it for a lot, but they only gave it 2. And then it was also nominated by the Hugo Awards for dramatic presentation. I have no doubt that has something to do with Philip K. Dick's name.
More with Philip K. Dick. Yeah.
But guess what?
It is not.
It is.
It is.
This movie is on the 1001 movies you must see before you die list, just like Paranormal Activity was when we did our episode last week. And I disagree with both of them. They should not be on there.
Yeah, I would put The Fly on there before I would put this one on there.
It may be on there, but I can't remember. So I don't know why this is on there, but it is. And there you go.
Well,
that's what I have.
That's kind of a good segue, because I would put the one that this is most, that influenced the most from this on it, which is Matrix. I would put that on 101 you have to see before this one.
It may be, I don't have a list of what is. We just always say it in the show. So people, you'll have to go back and listen to that show to find out.
Yes. But so are we ready for keys?
I guess unless you have any other trivia you want to go through before we get to keys, I am done except for keys. So
no, that would be my first key is Matrix. Not only just the whole, your perception is not what you think it is, and the life you've been living is all a lie kind of thing, but also even down to here, take a red pill.
Yeah.
This is a symbol that will free you from your captivity and, mind captivity sort of thing. Another pretty good scene and twist too, by the way. Going back. I also have, of course, the typicals, Philip K. Dick. You have to thank him. You have to think, it was obviously influenced there. Other dystopian or pseudo dystopian kind of future feels. This one felt a lot. Logan's Run kept coming up in my head too.
Because they're always running.
Well, you had said Fifth Element, but both of them from the kind of the aesthetic. This color palette is very similar to Fifth Element, so it's more like that. but also there's just a feel. This could be coexistent with Fifth Element, I think. I
Mhm.
agree with you. Whereas Logan's Run, it's this constant running and shooting kind of thing that made it for me all the way through.
Mhm.
Um,
You mentioned that the movie it inspired that was better was Matrix.
yes.
I have a key that I think's better.
Yeah.
Basket Case.
I see. Damn it, Tim. I did not go there, but that is great. That is so great. I'm hiding my brother.
I'm hiding
I am-
Belial in my side. He's
in
a
my,
he's
a
my
mutant.
Siamese twin. He looks like a squashed octopus.
They should have had Quatu's guy, or what's his name?
Quattros. Yeah, I can't think of his name, but Belial is the name of the twin in Basket Case.
Yeah, Quato. Yeah, they should have had him carrying a basket around the whole time.
And going, oh.
I have some you might not know just because you're not in the science fiction world, but Babylon 5. Babylon 5 is a huge key from this because there's a Martian rebellion going on. There's totalitarian abuse on Mars, that sort of thing. Expanse, because again, the Martians are trying to terraform the planet. It's mostly a mineral rich planet that is used basically by miners, that sort of thing. I don't think we could go through keys for this without saying Blade Runner and Inception, two that are, again, Philip K. Dick inspired sort of stories. Inception really is inspired by Dick, but it's whole
a
mindfuck sort
Yeah.
of thing. Yeah. The same thing with the one I just did, Don't Worry, Darling. It's the same way. It's a big, you're really lying on a bed having this entire fantasy. This isn't real.
I'm typing these as you go. I didn't list them because there's way too many, but I mean, any sci-fi dealing with Mars, basically.
Yeah, of course.
So
Trip to Mars, whatever.
and I was thinking the Martian Chronicles, but
oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I've got all of those other mindfuck movies like Memento, Dark City, Ghost in the Shell. All of those are, even down to Bourne Identity, which isn't science fiction, but it's the same thing. I suddenly have these martial arts skills. Where did I get these from? Oh, my mind's been wiped and I've got amnesia and I'm really a secret agent. I mean, that was so a key to me.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, Bourne Identity is a good key to this.
Yeah,
for sure, because of the whole spy element.
Yep,
and the memory loss.
Mm-hmm.
I have others. They are I mentioned the Fifth Element. That was the other one I had plucked out. I have some that I copped from IMDb.
Yeah.
And you knew this, and I think we talked about this when we covered this episode, but apparently there were plans for a sequel that evolved into the movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise, the Spielberg movie.
Sort of. Minority Report is based on a different short story, though, by Philip K. Dick.
But I think the production plans originated as a sequel to this and then evolved into that movie.
That one makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it said on IMDb. Another one I found that came out of left field, but I saw it on IMDb, is that he based the looks and actions of Edgemar on the professor in Torn Curtain, the Alfred Hitchcock movie.
Real? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I could see that.
They wanted to cast someone naive, strange, and a bit weird. So he took some of Alfred Hitchcock's shot compositions and camera placement low to the ground for those scenes between Edgemar and Quaid.
Yeah, low, looking up and everything else until you finally see the sweat dripping down.
So Verhoeven's trying to go all Hitchcock on us.
Woo,
I guess.
look at it.
Woo woo. And then lastly, the end of this movie is unresolved and left to the audience to decide, as you have already pointed out, whether he was dreaming or it really happened. Well, can you think of a good example of another movie that does that?
Where he was dreaming?
Whether it was all a dream or not.
Wizard of Oz.
Yes, that's it. Wizard of Oz is a key to this movie.
That would make, you question it. Did it really happen to her, or was it,
Right.
you know,
She wakes up and you were there and you were there and you were there.
Yep. I have a few final ones. I have the 2001, just because there are Hiltons in space. Yay. Of course, there should be Hiltons in space.
I forgot about that. Is Pan Am the main airline?
Yeah, it should be the airline. I have that whole thing that was happening in the late 70s and early 80s that I think influenced this, which was pyramids on Mars. You know, we're finally getting telescopic, you know, evidence of Mars, and we're seeing faces and pyramids and all of this, which means, oh, there are obviously aliens, you know, on Mars, kind of thing.
Oh, dude, that's that space episode you like from the X-Files.
Yeah, that's it. I've got one just for you.
Okay.
How does he kill Benny, the cab driver guy, with a driller killer, baby? Just right through the wall into you. Which reminded me, I have driller killer / body double. You know, because it's the same way. Let's kill him.
Body double actually is probably closer to it, but I mean, I don't remember the Driller Killer movie that much. Just the poster.
I just remember the poster, so I had to do it. Yeah.
I don't think that death is as memorable as Michael Ironsides. Michael Ironsides is just awful.
Yeah, that's
I mean, because he basically gets his arm severed off by an elevator and just goes flying backwards, you know, with no arms. Yeah.
And
it's pretty bad.
And Schwarzenegger has to do his little quip of "See you at the party." Yeah.
God,
and then
kill me now.
My last two are, of course, one of them is Westworld, because Westworld, of course, begins with, "Do you question the nature? Have you ever questioned the nature of your reality?" And the entire precept of that series is what you think is real really isn't real,
right? And
that kind of thing. And then I saved my best for last because that's a Vanessa Williams song. Sort of a double feature, in that this movie gives you two more reasons to not like Avatar. One, tribitium is just like unobtainium. It's the whole thing, and we have to have it, and it becomes this. I'm going to ask you what that is and what it does. We don't know, but you have to have it. The most expensive mineral in the planet, on the world, you know, it's kind of like, you know, the spice in Dune. It becomes this kind of, and it's his entire basis of his empire. And the reason that he doesn't want to turn on the machine is because it will destroy the tribitium, which is his moneymaker. Right. He's got a monopoly on oxygen and on tribitium, but we never know what tribitium is. Correct. And we never know what it's for, what it does. Same thing with unobtainium. We don't know. It's just the most valuable mineral in the world. God, I wish they would have called it unobtainium. Oh my God. And Avatar, a double agent falls in love with one of the locals, leads the bad boys to the rebel base, and they play like a Conan theme song. You know, I went, okay, great. Oh, and that's my last one. His Conan theme song is different. Sorry. If you play the very beginning of this movie and the theme song to this movie, which was written by Jerry Goldsmith, which he won an award for original score or whatever, then play Basil Polidorus's theme song to Conan, it's the same key, the same temp, the same composition, and the same melody. And yet Jerry Goldsmith totally scabbed it and won an award for it. But it is the exact same song almost. And who did Conan? Basil Polidorus did all of the music. Someone from Europe. From Spain, I think that's where he's from. Bastard. That sucks. Yeah, and Jerry Goldsmith went on to do a bunch of movies after this, you know, and everybody was talking about how great Total Recall was, and his instrumentation. We like Goldsmith. No. I do. I like some of his stuff. I mean, didn't he do Planet of the Apes? No, I don't think so. No, I love Planet of the Apes. I do too, but it's very Shostakovich kind of tonal kind of stuff. But I mean, Jerry Goldsmith did Star Trek. He did the motion picture. He did that theme. for that. And he's done, dozens of movies. I think he might have done, yes, he did do Planet of the Apes.
Oh, did he? Okay, I was looking.
One of my favorites that he did was Alien. I love Alien, but I thought this music was
I don't even remember the music. So that tells you right there. But I didn't realize he ripped somebody off. And I think it sucks that he ripped off, it makes it seem more plotted to do it from someone that people wouldn't know. It's not like he's going to rip off John Williams, but I'll just take some obscure Spanish composer and steal.
Right.
That sucks.
But and it's weird because it literally is so recognizable. As a matter of fact, I thought, they've dubbed this with the Conan soundtrack. And then because I love Conan. I used to listen to that soundtrack.
Oh, I know. We used to listen to it while we were building sets.
Yeah. And we used it for Macbeth. It was the big battle music for Macbeth. Did. Not on set. We would never do that copywritten material, but
that's copyrighted.
Yeah. But people I've known done that. But yeah, listen to it. It'll freak you out. As a matter of fact, I may even play it at the very end of this podcast. Just put it back
there
to
you
back,
go.
just so people can hear the same thing. Anyway, so I guess we should say thank you guys in summary listening for us. It is. Do you have last thoughts? What are your last thoughts or recommendations?
My last thoughts are really the thoughts I started with. Is that I remember liking this movie when it came out and thinking it was different and unique for its time. And now watching it, it seems dated, contrived, and I hate Arnold Schwarzenegger in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree with all of that. I do think Schwarzenegger is a big deficit to this film. I do think it's worth for science fiction fans to watch for the mindfuck and the twists and turns.
Just the fact that Philip K. Dick originated it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't age well. It hasn't held up well. And I think Verhoeven is not a great editor or pacer of a movie. And that kind of shows with all these lengthy chases.
Okay, maybe you just hit the key that maybe that's why I don't like him, is his pacing.
Yeah, it's slow in places and or feels like it should be. We don't need to see every freaking window on Mars implode to get the impression that something bad is happening. But he spends all this time showing these shots of just explosion after explosion after explosion. And I'm just going, okay, we got it. Okay, you're oxygenating the atmosphere. Sure you are. Yeah, great.
It's Armageddon.
Yeah. Michael Bay, that's a key from this. Michael Bay went, "Oh, I want to do movies like that."
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you guys for listening to us. Right?
We were what can I say? We are very grateful that you're here.
Yes.
Even though we may have not liked this movie, we do like some movies. Yes. And actually we like all movies or we wouldn't be here covering them.
Agreed.
If you like what you hear, please like, rate, and or review us on your favorite podcast platform of choice. If you're watching us on YouTube, we would appreciate it if you would subscribe, ring that bell. That helps us get more people to notice us, and we could use some more people.
Yes.
If you like what you hear and you want more that we don't have out there, you can hop over to Patreon, where we do even more intense deep dives into some shows like Star Trek, the original series, and The X-Files.
Yes.
We have done almost 2 seasons of both of those, and they are all available for less than a cup of coffee a month.
Yeah.
Over on Patreon. So we'd appreciate you going over there. And until next time, when I do believe we'll be back in the scary land of horror.
Great. Yay.
I will be seeing you, David.
I'll see you, Tim.
All righty. Bye.
Bye.
Can't start the car, Johnny